right, and we're live. What's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of Spartan Ownership, and we got a special guest today, Goldmund from GoldmundUnleased.com, and he writes awesome content on masculinity, on seduction, on traveling, and way more. He's written books. He comes out with content all the time. He's interviewed several authors of books I've read, and I want to give him the chance also to introduce himself because I'm sure he can do it a little bit better than me. So go ahead.
So I'm Goldmund from GoldmundUnleashed.com. I would say if you we were talking about before, you say you resonate with my writing. I think the spirit behind the writing is what's important for me. I mean, I love writing. Most of the blog is about like seduction and sex because that is super fun. Girls are a big fun part of life. But it's also about just enjoying every moment as much as you can. And whether that's through nature or art or, seduction, sex, or relationships with other guys and connecting with people, like that's what I'm trying to get at. Like I try and find my personal meaning in life comes from those things. And so that's where like my writing is all based on. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Cool. And I'm just going to launch straight into it and start by saying, I read one of your articles recently where you mentioned that you were in a relationship with a very beautiful girl from Paris, I believe. I think you even said she was a model or something like that. And then you said that you actually were having a great time and everything was going well, but you decided that you wanted to end the relationship. And I think the reason you gave was because you said you had to be by yourself to evolve. And that really stuck out to me because I don't think I know anybody that would, forsake a relationship that they're in order to evolve. And like, that just shows a certain degree of commitment to I guess to mastery. But what was the reasoning behind all that? Like, what happened?
I mean, the commitment to mastery is very important for me. Mm-hmm. And every few years of my life, usually it's around 2 to 3 years, I know I could feel myself changing. My interests change, like the stuff I'm working on changes. Just my views change a little bit. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not just a little bit. Sometimes it's a lot. And we were together we were in a relationship for 2 years. She lived with me for over a year. So like it was pretty intense. Like I said, it was a great, healthy relationship. I'm really glad it happened. She's glad it happened. But then once that 2-year mark came and I felt myself like I had to grow again. And there was no possible way I was going to grow like living with this girl. Like, because every free moment, not every free moment, but it's like whenever she was there, she's a girl, so she needs attention. Like that's what girls do. Okay, so even if I'm trying to work on something or study on my own, and even if she's like her presence is there, like she's just demanding that attention. And plus, we had reached a point in our relationship where it was kind of, we weren't evolving anymore. It was kind of, we weren't moving forward. We were enjoying life together a lot. We were enjoying things a lot. We were enjoying each other's company still, but we weren't growing as people for the both of us. And for me especially. And so I tried to explain that to her in the most honest way possible. She ended up understanding. I mean, she was super upset. I mean, we're still in touch. This is a while back. We're still in touch, so she still has those feelings for me. But I mean, that was the main thing, man. That's me as an individual. And they know this. Every girl I get into a relationship with, I'm very upfront and honest. Like, I'm not ready to settle down, but I want your company. We can go have fun, enjoy the world together, and you could come along on some adventures, and we could experience life together. And they know this from the get-go. So it's, I mean, yeah. So they never resent me for it, which is, I think, especially if you want to get into game and meeting a lot of women, which I highly recommend, especially for young men, it's important to be honest with them and with yourself. With yourself first.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a follow-up, when you say you weren't evolving with her, like you were enjoying life, everything was going well, but you weren't evolving. Did you like what if a guy was in that situation? Like he's having a great relationship, everything's going well. How does he know if he's not evolving, and if he feels like it, does he have to, end the relationship, or does he or is another choice basically to confront the girl and say, hey, we need to start evolving,
I don't know if it's possible to have that conversation. I don't know. I'm not a relationship expert. I'm a
Hmm.
seduction expert.
Right.
But I mean, for me, I just felt myself getting super restless. I knew there was something inside me that was really stirring, and plus, I felt this before. I felt it so much that I knew I had to make some kind of change. But
Hmm.
I wasn't ready to break up with her just because everything was going so well, and like she's a model from Paris. Like fucking guys would kill to be with this girl. So I'm just like, all right.
Yeah.
So I was at this like very, this very clear crossroads,
Hmm.
and that's when I went down to Peru and I did my ayahuasca ceremony. And when I was under the influence of ayahuasca in that ceremony, a lot of things came together, and I realized, like in the visions, it was very clear, like how I viewed her, and it was, in one of the visions, it was definitely her, but she was represented like as a small child that I was protecting and taking care of,
Hmm.
and that's not what I wanted. Like she was very young, she was still quite immature, great girl, but like as like a man in my early 30s, like I don't want to take care of a little kid. I wanted to, be with a woman
Right.
or with many women. And like since then, I've been with many women and it worked out. But the visions and ayahuasca just kind of solidified what I was thinking, and it made it real.
Hmm. That's very, very interesting, man. And I also got a comment about like solitude, which
Mm.
I find is very important. And I'm not sure if or if you're familiar with The Way of the Superior Man by David Data.
Yes, yes, I love that book.
Yeah, me too. And he
That's
talks
very
about solitude quite a bit. I mean, I'm sure he has I'm pretty sure he has a chapter or two on it. And he says that periodically it's good for men to restore their purpose in solitude.
yeah,
And I find that so true. Like, especially here in this society where we have so many different kind of distractions
hmm
and companies just competing for our attention.
hmm
It's hard to feel connected to your purpose all the time because you could wake up feeling like, yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna take action today. I'm gonna freaking work out. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And
yeah,
then next thing you know, there's an ad on Facebook, and then you're distracted, and you're on YouTube, and you're browsing and surfing the internet, and it's just so many opportunities for comfort and instant gratification, and it just pulls your freaking attention away.
yeah, yeah. And I found this was a kind of it was a weakness of mine. I don't know if it's a weak. It's just a natural thing for a guy like coming out of his late teens, early 20s. He wants that companionship with like even with like other friends, like old friends.
Hmm.
Like I remember, I thought like our friendship was so important. Like all through my early 20s, I had a really solid group of friends, but they were guys. They weren't inspiring me to do better, but they were old friends, like really good friends of mine. We could have open conversations, but it was really funny to think like in my early 20s, I thought like that social connection was so important. It was like that's all that mattered, man. Was just like hanging out with my boys, going out to parties, getting drunk, hanging out all night long, kind of wasting time together, doing stuff like that. Whereas like again, that's not you're not really growing if you're around people all the time. It's impossible.
Hmm.
It's impossible to develop your vision. It's impossible to, have that find your purpose, find what you really your view of the world. Because you can't be influenced by everybody all the time, your friends' opinions. Social media is the biggest disgusting distraction the world has ever seen. And
Yeah.
everybody's opinion there, man, it's so fucked up. Like I said, I was never active on Facebook, but I have an account and I check it sometimes just to keep in touch with people, and it's disgusting that they're all thinking the same thing, and it's impossible to break free from that if you're constantly surrounded by people. So yeah, solitude is incredibly important. And I wrote a blog post about 2 months ago by it was just a review of the book Letters to a Young Poet
Hmm.
by Rainer Maria Rilke, and it's just he knows the importance of solitude, and like that book is also it resonates a lot. So yeah,
I'll definitely check that out, man. And I was gonna ask this question later on, but I guess now that you've mentioned friend groups, I'll put it in now. Which is you interviewed Jack Donovan, and a lot of my guys know that who Jack Donovan is. They know The Way of Men, like the book. They read it, and they kind of like that the fact that he's bringing back this view of masculinity that so many men are just not even connected to, which is a masculinity that embraces taking responsibility for violence, and it takes a masculinity that incorporates tribalism and There we go. Becoming a barbarian.
So yeah,
Awesome, awesome.
this latest one, yeah.
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Actually, I've read about half of it, and it's just he talks about things that are almost taboo, even when it comes to masculinity, like tribalism and
Yeah, yeah,
no tears for strangers. That's a freaking thing that he
yeah.
talks about in becoming a barbarian. But what you said that you hung out a lot with guys, and that was a huge priority for you, like in your early 20s. And now that you realize, look, it's not my priority to go out all the time and have fun and just do all this kind of surface level stuff. But what are your thoughts on tribalism? And are you interested in, because that's kind of jacked down of its main components, you know? So
Yeah.
what do you do when it comes to tribalism?
Okay, so I mean that's definitely a different component than being young and hanging on to your old friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, if having a tribe, there's mature guys with their own visions, and your visions align. So those are finding guys who align with your own vision and forming a bond with them. I do think that's very important. For me personally, I grew up in a very, very tight family. Like we're New York Italians. Half
Mm-hmm.
my family's Italian. You're from New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like New York Italians, they have this fucking bond. So I mean, I still have that strong bond with a lot of my uncles, a lot of my cousins. So I consider them my tribe. So if I need people to fall back on, I know if the world goes to shit, we're going to band together and we're going to fight for each other. So I've got that tribe with me, and we do still hang out a lot. So I do think it's very important, but it is so goddamn hard. Like once you get like in your 30s, like it's really, really difficult to find strong male friendship. Like I have just a couple, like good male friends in New York where we can hang out and actually talk. We're not just going out to pick up girls. We're bonding and living like that. But it's difficult, man. But I do think it's very important for me personally. It's coming from family though. And then also I grew up in a very cultish religion. So I mean that was their tribe. I'm not with that anymore, but it taught me a lot about how important that was.
Right. That's
Yeah.
interesting,
That
man.
sense of protection, and that sense you're fighting for something, and you have people you care for, and have your back, which is a really, really it's good for your spirit when you know there's another guy who has your back. It's important.
Right. True, man. I actually, you said it was very hard nowadays, especially in your 30s, to get a group of guys to be like that. And
Yeah.
I gotta say, man, even in my 20s, like, it's still freaking really hard because I tried organizing a tribe once, or
Mhm.
even twice, I think I tried, with a bunch of guys I knew, and all of them had similar mindsets, but they all kind of came from different cultures.
Right.
So that ended up fucking up at the end because one guy was like Latino, the other guy was Russian, and I was like mixed or whatever. So when I tried to get everybody to bond, like it was working, but there was just so many things that were incongruent that it ended up not working, and it's just hard to, like you said, get a bunch of guys to think on that level. So I
Yeah.
agree, man.
The world does everything it can to prevent that from happening. So it's not going to get easier either. So yeah, I have no solution for that. I mean, just keep trying is all I can say.
That's true, actually. And so you mentioned that the world is trying to keep that from happening. So there's a lot of talk these days about the world and how like it's almost like they don't want diversity, right?
Hmm.
And they're all trying to get everybody to be in this one monoculture so that they can basically sell everybody the same shit.
Oh no, they want diversity. That's what you meant, right?
No, like they don't want diversity. Meaning,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
they don't want
I
people to band together. They want
yeah,
they want everybody to be the same. You know.
yeah. I mean, this started a long time ago in the world. They called it Americanization. Like
Hmm.
with my generation, it was Americanization of the world. The consumer culture. Yeah, it's all about money. Like there's no question about it. If everybody's thinking the same way, it's going to be easier for big corporations to sell their shit to the masses. If they're all thinking and they want to be the same, they want to dress the same, they want to eat the same food. So yeah, I mean it all comes down to money in the
Hmm.
long run. So yeah, it's been happening since I don't even know when, but it was definitely happening when I was in college in like the late '90s, early 2000s. It was a big concern. I remember all my professors talking about it, the Americanization of the world. I think I got a little bit lucky going to college during that time because it wasn't overrun with like politically correct culture. Like the guys, it was a huge concern. They called it Americanization of the world, and they were very, very concerned about it. And I mean, it's manifested itself now, big time.
Right. That's so true, man. And it's like so many people don't even see it happening. They're just in the whole midst of it, and it really takes you like out of the matrix when you freaking see the world from that perspective. It's insane. But anyway, you don't just talk about like self-development. You obviously talk a lot about game and travel. And I saw a blog post where you basically mentioned that you went to Mexico.
Yeah, I've been to Mexico a lot in these past couple of years. I love it down there.
Yeah, and you said like you just had all these adventures there, and my question is, what was your kind of like motivation to go to Mexico, and did you do it in a very organized manner, or did you kind of just put out an intention and just go with the flow of it?
Well, you should definitely read my first book, Go Forth. I answer all those questions in depth. So it stemmed from that my first ayahuasca experience that I talked about when I decided to come back and break up with my girlfriend and evolve. So I came back from that and I broke up with her. And then during one of my visions during ayahuasca, I had a vision of Mexico. And it was just like something was brewing down there in the vision. Something was brewing and I had to go see what it was. And so, I mean, that's what Go Forth is all about. It's about a spiritual journey and how I kind of found myself while I was down there. So it stemmed from ayahuasca, and then I went down there, and I knew something was going to happen. So I just had my eyes completely open while I was down there, and I tried to meet as many people as possible and let whatever happened. Like I felt I was just a vessel for these. I just wanted to let whatever life was going to throw at me. I was going to take whatever came.
And did you like plan it out a lot? Because the way you're talking about it seems like you knew something was going to happen, so you just went there.
Well, I went after the first ceremony. I went as fast as I could, so I found a cheap ticket. I went down to Mexico City for a week, and then while I was there, I also took a small trip to Oaxaca. I drove a car down there. It's like a 6-hour drive, and while I was in Oaxaca for a couple of days, it was just I felt it. I felt the magic there. So I was just there for a couple days. I connected so well with the people. I love just the way the city is, where it's located. I just felt super inspired. So then when I came back from that trip, I organized it so I could go back down there again and spend my summer down there. So I spent my summer in Oaxaca working, and that's where my book Go Forth takes place.
Gotcha.
Is during that summer when I was really discovering my new adult self. And fucking tons of girls. Because because like I said, man, I was ready for anything, and it was just like, yeah, that was a big part of it.
Right. That is awesome, man. And since you went there and you experienced all these women, and obviously you've experienced women elsewhere as well, you obviously have a lot of experience with women. This is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And plus, you also have a unique experience with the kind of information you consume, the kind of information you put out. And I don't think it's like a lot of this other kind of dating nonsense, superficial bullshit. It's like a part of your life. It's like, like you're not a weekend warrior when it comes to this shit. It's who you are. And so I'm interested in talking a little bit more in depth about game. And what are some things about game that a lot of men overlook and, just take for granted? Like most guys, they'll tell you got to be confident, this and that. Those are like the things everybody hears. But what are a few things that most guys don't hear but actually play a big role when it comes to seduction?
I mean, for my personal game, I mean, a lot of it came from developing my self-knowledge. And once you know yourself, it's very much easier to connect with other people because then you're comfortable. That builds your confidence. But when it comes to like specific game, tenets, I call them tenets that I kind of live by, and they just become a part of me. One of them that I learned from, are you familiar with Nick Krauser?
A little bit, yeah.
So he mostly focuses on day game, but he's really into the psychology behind things. And so his was the first actually game textbook that I read because I read dozens of them. His was the first one that really connected with my psychology because he described something called communicating with your core.
Hmm.
So that means like when you see a girl who you're attracted to, it could just be her vibe, her personality, the way she looks. She's got big tits, whatever you're really attracted to. Like you use that energy and it doesn't make you anxious. You use it to realize like, okay, I'm attracted to this woman. I'm going to use this to energize myself and then project it outward. So instead, like the anxiety comes from taking that energy and putting it in, which is bad because then you clam up and you don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. So when you communicate with your core, you're so in touch with your inner self, you can use that energy and then project it outwards. And then you really do want to understand and get to know that woman. And then he also describes how that's okay. Like, because I grew up in very religious, where it was like treat women like special princesses. Like, you have to, buy them gifts and treat them very well, and then they'll have sex with you. And there's this kind of pure creatures, but they want to fuck. Like these girls, they're out here, especially the young ones, the ones that I like. They're out. They want to get laid just as much as we do. I mean, they protect themselves, but they love sex, dude. Like they love sex so much. Like when you're fucking a girl and she's having an orgasm, like her eyes are in the back of her goddamn head. She's screaming. Like I don't have an orgasm like that. Like she's out of her mind. So they love sex and they want it. And once I made that mindset switch, and it took me a while to do, and it took a lot of girls, and it took me a long time to see what they were really like. But I mean, that was huge. And like understanding to go out, if you see girls out partying and they're dressed up, like, and they're showing off their bodies, like they want to have sex, and it's okay to kind of open up and be sexual with them. So I mean that was pretty big. And plus understanding that, then that led to me saying whatever I wanted. Like basically, if you come across with the right attitude and you're communicating with your core and you're being like, you're just embracing being a man and you're just being, oh babe, you're sexy. I could smell your pussy getting wet from here. Like some shit like that, which I never thought you could say to a girl. Like when you say it, when it comes from a real place, and they just love it. They love it. Like I've never been slapped before, and I've said some crazy shit. I say some really over-the-top shit I never thought I could get away with. And so once that started happening, it kind of opened up a lot of different possibilities. So those things.
So that sounds kind of like, if I were to sum it up in 2 words, it would be authenticity and congruence.
Yeah.
Like your core. So congruence would be you have a desire when it comes to her, whatever it may be, and you express it straight from your core. It's not coming from like some mental game you're playing. You're not like, oh, what do I say? What do I give her? Do I buy her a drink? You're just like,
you can do that with the not so attractive ones. That's what, like when I was learning game, like I had the routines and I had the silly, the questions and stuff like that. It works with like, the 6s and the 7s, but if you want the higher quality, that's where it comes from the core, because they're used to it and they know, and they only want the best. So you got to bring your best.
And another question I have about game actually too is, there's a lot of guys like, you ever heard of the book Models by Mark Manson?
Yes, I read that book.
Yeah, so he talks a lot about
vulnerability.
Yeah, like the basic premise of the book is vulnerability, and how it's important to be vulnerable and stop being so up in your head, constantly thinking of all these different things to say.
Yeah.
And I think about that sometimes, and it's like, it sounds so good, and I think there's some value in it, but nowadays I think girls are so like superficial, and they just see things at a surface level, especially if they're very young, like in their 20s, like early 20s, that you have to kind of play on certain surface level bullshit too. Like, for example, aloofness, being cold, being, kind of ignoring them or doing stuff like that. I noticed that, like, I don't want it to be true. I just want to go up to a girl and be myself and be nice or whatever. But I just found that, like, when you act like a dick sometimes and you're cold and you don't even call them back or whatever, it just plays a freaking role,
Yeah, and that's also kind of where you put yourself, the culture you put yourself in. Like I'm not very I love I could use the example of New York City. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I live in New York City. Been living here for the past 13, 14 years, and I chose to live in Brooklyn because in Brooklyn, like I can, that's where girls tend to be attracted to me because then I can more not I won't say be myself, but I can just say whatever the fuck I want. And it's a completely different story when I go into like the Lower East Side of Manhattan or the Meatpacking, and you've got the Americanized club sluts.
Mm.
Then they hate my normal game there. So I have to switch it up. If I want to actually have a chance of hooking up with one of those club sluts, which rarely happens because I don't like playing the role of somebody I'm not, but I have to be just an asshole, make fun of them, do tons of negging, shit like that. So I mean, I try and choose the places, and this is another reason I chose Oaxaca. It was like the girls were very attracted to my vibe. It's a very creative city. There's a lot of artists there, a lot of musicians, just like Brooklyn. Like that's why I live here. There's a lot of European girls who come through here, and usually European girls, they're not as superficial as the Americans, and they like the psychological connection. And those are kind of the places I choose to travel to too,
Mm-hmm.
because they're. I mean, I'm not like the most versatile player in the fucking world. I can't go to like an LA club where it's super loud and you got sluts in there on ecstasy dancing. Like I'm never going to be able to pull from a place like that. So it's I mean, you got to be smart about where you run game. So
Hmm.
and it's hard. I mean, if you're not mobile, if you can't live in a big city, it's going to be difficult because the superficiality is hard to cut through.
So that's interesting. So it's like you understand your game and you understand what kind of girl likes it, and then you sort of tailor it to your environment. So you literally choose environments based off of your game and how it affects people, which is
Exactly. I
interesting.
know I know the type of environment. As soon as I step into a club nowadays, I know if it's going to be good or bad
Hmm.
for like my what I want to do. I mean, I could pretend and run the stupid routines and be over the top asshole, or pull back and be really nice, which is some environments you do have to be nice. But I'd rather just do what I do. And I mean, there's a lot of different cities around North America for that. I just came from Burlington, Vermont. The fucking girls love me in Burlington, Vermont. So it's just like they love me, man. So that was easy for me to be myself. Other places, Montreal is a pretty good one. Portland, Oregon, there's a lot of like hipster chicks, but there's also some hot girls. Austin, Texas, I do really well, and New Orleans, like places like that with kind of a more laid back vibe and kind of like a European vibe, but in North America is where I tend to excel.
That's interesting, man. I like that because it's not like some woo woo type like all you got to do is like embrace your masculine energy and they'll come.
Mm.
You're like nah. I accept reality and I'm strategic about it, but I'm not like gonna change who the hell I am.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna look for girls that like the kind of person I am. And
yeah. Plus, I
yeah,
want to go out and have fucking fun.
right.
Like I want to go out and just like, have a blast. Like it, and this is one of the lines I've been using recently. It's not even a lot. But it's so true. Is that I tell a girl, like especially if she has a cock blocking friend, and she's like, "Oh, you just want to fuck my friend?" I'm like, "Listen, I came out to have fun. I'm
Mm.
having fun right now. We're having a good connection. If we end up having sex, great. It's gonna be great. We end up in bed together, fantastic. It's a great way to end the night." And then like they're cool with it, because that is exactly how I feel.
Right. It's congruent to you. Cool. And but more on the superficial kind of girls because there's so many guys that are just stuck in environments where they have to deal with these kinds of girls and they have to learn how to adapt to their situations. Like not everybody could move, and especially for guys in college, you got the frat, the girls that chill in the frats and all that. So my question to you would be, if you were a guy in college and you were just surrounded by mostly girls like of the not desired variety, meaning the more
Yeah.
superficial ones, would you recommend like would you tell a guy like that to say fuck it and embrace the suck and just toughen up and learn kind of what attracts those girls and just go for it, or would you tell him to stay himself and just look for that 1 in 100 that might like him?
No, I think if you're in college, you should be fucking a lot of girls. I don't think like I think that's true. And if you're in a college environment where there is that superficiality, learn some stupid routines. I did routines for 2 years, man. For 2 years, I was just doing stupid routines, reading the palm, doing like reading their rings. Oh, the ring on this finger leads straight to your heart, and like just doing the stupid routines that turns them on. You could fuck them for the night. Because then once you get that experience, okay, once you know what works, it took me 2 years for this. 2 years of not being congruent, but I got so much experience. And then I learned what works, and also it built my confidence. I mean, for those 2 years, I mean, yeah, they weren't the highest quality model chicks. I mean, they weren't ugly fat girls, but they were just, I wasn't embarrassed fucking them, but, at least it gave me that exposure to the feminine, their vulnerable side. And what I would also highly recommend is if you do have sex with a girl, and like if it's good sex especially, and you're after sex, have the fucking little pillow talk and straight up ask her, like, what attracted you to me? That is actually, before I knew game, when I first started fucking girls, when I was, a young guy, that was because I've always been interested in seduction. And you'll learn a lot from that, and they love talking about it. So like, and the pillow talk is the best time. That's when they're most open, they're the most honest, you can have a laugh about it, and you'll learn a shit ton just by asking them, oh, when was the point where, you decided you wanted to fuck me? And it might be something that'll completely blow your mind, but it'll teach you a valuable lesson.
That reminds me of another thing I heard too, which is when you meet a girl, let's say you go out and you try to pick some girl up somewhere, and like she rejects you for whatever reason. I forget who said this, but I'm curious to see if you would recommend doing this as well. And it's after a girl rejects you and whatever, tells you to fuck off, would you recommend going up to her and saying, hey, look, I'm going to leave you alone and everything, don't worry about it, but what about this interaction led you to think this way?
Yeah, I've done that before.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on the vibe. I mean, if you're feeling it and if you're honest about it, like, don't do it like being a weirdo, because I could definitely picture some guys doing this and just completely getting the girl freaked out and then getting kicked out of the bar for saying it. But I mean, if you're really feeling it and if you're really curious, yes, I would say that. And then it might lead to a funny conversation, and it'll also kill your ego a little bit, which is important when it comes to game, because then you'll be able to deal with rejections no problem. So I mean, I've definitely done this before. Be like, come on, babe, what happened? Why don't you like me? Like, it's
right.
But you have to. It has to come from a real place, and you can't come across as a weirdo, because I could definitely see you getting kicked out of a bar for reapproaching a girl that already rejected you, and then creeping her out even more.
Yeah, just trying to analyze. Please, just tell me exactly what I did wrong.
No, you're getting kicked out. Yeah, don't do that.
Oh man, and I know game is like, it's not one of those things you do where you read a book once and then bam, you go out the next day and you're freaking running in pussy. It's kind of like the whole like stupid ads you see on the internet now, which is like get rich in 30 days and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
There's no such thing even with game, but just to kind of play on the different factors of game though, what are some things that kind of immediately impact your game, like that when you start doing them? Like for instance, you mentioned style, I think, as a big thing you talk about.
I mean, if you want to change something overnight, your style is number one. Like number one. I mean, figure out what works for you. I figured out what worked for me. I got some help from Tanner Guzzi from masculinestyle.com. He helped me out. He just told me like the different colors that would work with my skin tone. He also told me with your personality, like there's different personalities. Like I'm very much of a rake, just kind of the guy floating through the world, like not really held to any moral responsibility, like just embraces fucking around and just wants the best out of life. And that's where the jewelry comes in. So, I mean, once I started wearing jewelry, I noticed a huge change overnight. Like I have a huge ayahuasca pendant, and I wear that thing around my neck. I'll wear it with a simple t-shirt like this, and I will notice as soon as I start talking to a girl, if she's interested, she'll always, 90% of the time, pick that up, ask me what it is, where it's from, and then I've got my big ayahuasca story behind it, and it hooks her even more. Yeah, so I wear tons of like watches, bracelets, rings, stuff like that, and it also exudes that I'm not going to be your boyfriend. That's why I love the accessories, because it automatically sets you apart, and I don't want to be anybody's boyfriend. And it's like they can see that from a mile away. I'm
Wow.
usually wearing my hat. I've got crazy boots on, like, so I mean that's the number one overnight thing. But as far as psychologically doing it, I'd say, okay, so another tenet of mine that I learned and I started adapting almost overnight was treat girls, especially in their 20s, like they're little kids who want to have fun. Like, I didn't grow up with sisters. I have a few brothers, but I didn't grow up with sisters. So once I started learning about that, like, and I forgot where I read it. I think it was an old pickup artist thing. Like, it was Neil Strauss or Mystery who recommended it. But then I started like thinking about them as little girls. Like, I would go up and approach like a really, really good looking chick, and I would picture her as like a little kid. And then I start teasing her, and like I would think about, like, I've got little cousins, little girl cousins. I'm always teasing them and making them laugh and like slapping them in the head and like doing stuff like that. As soon as I started treating these hot girls like this, they warmed up immediately. And like, even in my relationships, like half the time we're laughing. Like, if I've got a girl around for a little while, half the time I'm teasing her, we're laughing, I'm poking fun at her, and we're just having a good time. So treating them and viewing them like the little children that they are, which is, I wouldn't even say it's disrespectful, because I mention this to them all the time. I'm like, you're still just a little kid. And they're like, oh, I know. So
Right.
it's, yeah.
That's actually really interesting too. Yeah, I noticed that when I'm in a social interaction, I mean, by myself, I tend to be a very kind of intense guy because I'm
Right.
always reading, I'm always trying to like ask these crazy questions about life, and most people my age, and even people in their 30s, actually, I found, don't really think about like very deep topics for the most part. So I noticed that when you're with people that aren't like-minded, it's best to almost just come out with random little bullshit things you could talk about to
Yeah.
kind of just entertain them almost, which is kind of
Yeah.
what you would do with kids.
Yeah. And that, I mean, talking about that stuff, that's what your tribe is for. Like, that's
Exactly.
what finding those guys you can connect with are. I mean, I used to be the same way, because like I'm very much introverted, like naturally introverted. All this extroversion, all me blah blah blahing and the shit that I do, that's all learned, and I consciously have to turn a switch on. But yeah, because my natural tendency is to want to think deeply, and in a social situation, naturally I don't want to be involved. I'd rather sit back and watch, just because I think it's fascinating.
Right.
But in order to have a good time, and that's all learned. So you have to be involved with people. You have to spit bullshit, make jokes, and just talk about things that aren't going to really. You're not engaging the brain. I don't know what you're engaging emotion rather than the intellect.
Right. That's so interesting because it's like it's so counterintuitive because most people think, oh, if you have a thing to talk about, if you're an intense guy, just be yourself and talk about it. But it's like, no, most people don't respond to just logical, intense conversations. They respond more to emotional shit, and that's why I think bullshit like the Kardashians is so popular. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, that's the story of my life up until I was like 28 years old, dude. And I was like, why can't I get laid? Like, why can't I feel comfortable? Because that was my reasoning for a long, long time.
Which makes me think now that I understand a bit better why you said it's almost impossible to evolve when you're in a relationship with a woman, because what are you going to do? Are you going to start drilling her about the crazy shit that's going on in your head? Because if
Mm.
you do, you're going to kind of take away from that like little kid vibe and the whole thing and the emotions.
Yes. Also, another thing, if like my very minimal relationship advice would be like if I have a girl who's around for a while, like I had the girlfriend that I broke up with, then I had another girl I was seeing for about a year and a half. I was still fucking around, but like we were together while I was in New York. I told them straight up, like, my lovers are not my friends. Like, we're not friends. Like, don't treat me like one of your girlfriends, because that's not what I am. I'm your lover. That's my role. And, if you want to talk about life, it's not going to be easy with me. Like, we could talk about certain things. We could talk about our relationship. We could talk about, what we enjoy in life. But as far as being friends, like, that's not what I'm here for. And they responded really well to that. And I saw something click. Both times I said it, to both of the French girls, they were like, oh, it's true.
Wow. So you consciously choose to avoid certain almost topics and stuff because you don't want it to destroy the frame of the kind of relationship you want.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to really build a spark of, lust or sexual energy if you're talking about, politics or religion, especially since like my politics and religious beliefs are usually completely the opposite of the girls that I fuck. So it's not like
Right.
there's no, there, you're not, there's no point. Like there's no point if you want to bring out the best in her.
Right. You start talking
'Cause
about the freaking red pill and shit while you're with a girl.
no. Like avoid
Yeah.
that shit. Like bring it up subtly. I like being like subtle and sneaking it in there sometimes and
Yeah.
calling her out on her bullshit. But you can't do that all the time.
Beautiful. And I know we're running out of time, so I just want to give everybody an opportunity to find out more about you and your books, and how do they go for that, and even coaching I think you do, which if people are on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I mean the coaching has been great. The coaching has been fantastic. Yeah. So if you want to do that, I usually do it out of New York, but I do travel along the East Coast if you want to do that. It's basically I don't give you like a set of rules, but I can guarantee you that if we go out, we are going to meet tons of girls and we are going to have a good time. And then I'll analyze how you're talking to them, how you interact. But the whole point of the coaching is the experience. Like we will meet at least, I'm trying to think, and within like a 3 or 4 hour period of time, we're going to meet at least 10 to 15 girls, minimum. And so, that's the coaching. And a lot of it, if you want to have a good time in New York, that's what I'm here for. Yeah, you can find me on goldmundunleashed.com. My books, like I said, I think it came out through the interview what my style is all about. I'm more of a storyteller rather than like a how-to guy, because I respond most to stories and examples. So yeah, it's been good talking to you, man.
Yo, awesome stuff, man. Great interview. I really enjoyed this talk, and it'll be up soon. And so, guys, this was our interview with Goldmund Unleashed, and check his blog out. He also has awesome articles. And yeah, man, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Max. Thanks, brother.
Take care.
Peace.